ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land.
So one of the things that has happened in the American church is that the devil has utilized social justice, Marxism, to infiltrate most of your Protestant churches. The Episcopal Church is an example of a church that once stood for biblical truth that no longer does so. It has been overrun by LGBTQ activists. It has been overrun by progressive Christianity to the point to where it does not resemble the church that Jesus has established. It does not resemble anything in relation to what the Bible says the church should resemble. And that's because once you have turned over yourself, your doctrine, your thoughts, your ideology, your theology to the culture, to the winds of the culture, to the God of this age, you will become compromised. The Episcopal Church, along with other churches, have become compromised. And so therefore, it was no surprise that you had a female bishop who is up there asking President Trump to show mercy to the LGBTQ and to immigrants. And it was so demeaning and condescending as she says that they are the people that clean your houses and pick your crops. That is how white liberals think about your people of color. That's how they view them, condescendingly. They pick your crops and they clean your houses. But it's not the first time this person has been advocating on the behalf of black and brown people.
Why did you want to come out here and send
their message? It is a message of a call for justice for George Floyd, for systemic justice for all brown and black people who have been under the knee of this country in ways that we have witnessed time and again. This is wrong. And this rising up, this spontaneous uprising of people, mostly half my age or younger, they're the ones we should be listening to.
And they're angry at the president.
They're so angry.
They're angry at the president. So what is your message to President Trump today?
Well, I've given up speaking to President Trump. We need to replace President Trump. We need leadership that will lead us in the ways that this country deserves.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as you can see, she is not a fan of President Trump. And so she was probably the wrong person to have to give the address at the National Cathedral. That was an oversight. That was something that probably should not have happened. But it's no surprise because, like I've said, in the American church, by and large, most Protestant denominations have been overrun by this social justice, this gender ideologies, Marxist ideologies, gender queer stuff that has now turned most churches into activist places. Just how I talk about in the black church, how it is the paraministry of the Democratic Party in the black community. The same thing could be said about some of these Episcopal churches and some of these Lutheran churches that have given them, the Methodist Church, that have given themselves over to the God of this age, to the culture, to where now they are just talking points, mouthpieces for the progressive agenda of the Marxists and the communists and the socialists. So it's no surprise that this person decided to go on The View and to pretend to be the victim.
You seem to have more fearlessness than anyone in Congress right now, ma'am. What made you decide to use that opportunity for this message, or didn't you have any apprehension about it?
My response, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be with you today. My responsibility that morning, yesterday morning, was to reflect, to pray with the nation for unity. And as I was pondering what are the foundations of unity, I wanted to emphasize respecting the honor and dignity of every human being, basic honesty and ability. And then I also realized that that unity requires a certain degree of mercy and compassion and understanding. And so knowing that a lot of people, as I said, in our country right now are really scared, I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of that of service for unity to say we need to treat everyone with dignity. And we need to be merciful. I was trying to counter the narrative that is so divisive and polarizing, and in which real people are being harmed.
Predictably, you seem to strike a nerve. President Trump initially said yesterday it was, quote, not a good service, unquote. But overnight, he took to social media to say you were a, quote, radical left hardline Trump hater, unquote, that you brought the church into politics and that you owe your church and the public an apology. Now, given your role, it doesn't seem surprising that you would speak out for the marginalized, as anyone who's read the Bible and knows the path of Jesus. But do you think your message is being misconstrued and politicized?
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. But I think if you read what I said, and I mean, how could it not be politicized, right? We're in a hyper political climate. One of the things I caution about is the culture of contempt in which we live that immediately rushes to the worst possible interpretations of what people are saying and to put them in categories such as the ones you've just described. That's part of the air we breathe now. And I was trying to speak a truth that I felt needed to be said, but to do it in as respectful and kind a way as I could. And also to bring other voices into the conversation, which voices that had not been heard in the public space for some time.
And Bishop, given that we live in such a divided time as you've reflected on, and knowing how this message might be received by Trump supporters, I wonder if your words may have had more impact if they were shared one-on-one with the president, and was there an opportunity to have that conversation?
I've never been invited into a one-on-one conversation with President Trump. And I would welcome that opportunity. I have no idea how that would go. I can assure him and everyone listening that I would be as respectful as I would with any person, and certainly of his office, for which I have a great deal of respect. But the invitation would have to come from him.
You see, this is what happens when a church is out of order, because the Bible clearly gives definitions and qualifications for who can be a bishop. So first off, you have to establish who the context is. Whenever you're reading the Bible, you have to establish the context of the chapter, of the passage that you are reading. So Paul is writing to his son in the gospel, Timothy. Timothy was a pastor that came up under Paul. And so Paul is writing to Timothy to explain to him how to properly identify and qualify people that are desiring the office of a bishop. See, the bishop is an office. It is an office. It is a position within the local church. It is different than the gifts that are spoken about in Ephesians 4, around verse 11, where it talks about, and he gave some. Jesus gave some to the church. Jesus gave these gifts to the church: apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. That word pastor there means shepherd. It's different than what is meant by this word here, bishop, overseer. See, an overseer is different than a quote unquote pastor, because an overseer is an administration, and God, based upon biblical order, does not lay out the opportunity for women to be in a position of overseeing or administration. Now, he makes exceptions because people will go to, for example, the judge Deborah. Yes, God would make exceptions because sometimes he can't find a man, like he says in Ezekiel. He can't find a man. So therefore, God will have to use women because, unfortunately, a lot of men are not qualified based upon what I'm about to read to you here. So this is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless. See, that would disqualify a lot of men. And a lot of men are operating in the position of a bishop, and they should not be. We've seen a lot of them fall lately because they were not operating in the correct mindset or the correct position. The husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous. One who rules his own house well. This will disqualify a lot of people too. Having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice. Like, for example, in the Church of God of Christ, how they're trying to put up Denzel Washington as a preacher, as a pastor. He's a novice in the things of God. Now, I know that applies to a preacher, but still, that's what's happened to Kanye West and some of the other people that were propped up when they first became Christian. Stop propping up these people who are celebrities who just became Christians and have them out here speaking and preaching and teaching. They're not ready for that. But I digress. Not a novice. Lest being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, those who are in the world. See, the Bible talks about how a good name is to be treasured above riches. A good name will carry you further than any money you will have. A good name will carry you further than any money that you will have, because a good name will open up doors for you. People will do things for you based upon your reputation. Reputation is critical. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So that female bishop who chastised and made an appeal to Donald Trump was out of line, out of order, out of biblical order. She should not have been a bishop in the first place. But like I said, when you give place, when you bend your knee to the world, to the culture, to the progressive feminism that has run roughshod in the American church, then you will open yourself up to being in the snare of the devil and make yourself and your congregation victims. We're not victims. We are empowered for greatness.